I didn't send you this before the show, but what you're talking about is so interesting to me in light of this memo that I was reading from the Republican Study Committee, which was a 6-page memo sent by House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy from California. He's a Republican. He is talking about this realignment that's supposedly happening, and I'm going to quote some parts of it because I just want you to dig into it because I think this really forecasts some of the political future that we're going to see. So he writes, members that want to swap out working class voters because they resent President Trump's impact on the GOP are wrong. In fact, they are intentionally sabotaging Republicans' political future. And then he goes on to say that the vast majority of Republicans don't and shouldn't want to return to a GOP that neglects working class voters. But the key point here is the way he says to court those voters, what they want to be the deliverables. And that is to hug the agenda that differentiated President Trump in 2016 and supplement it with new relevant ideas. Those ideas are not outlined, other than some things I'll touch on later that are just stunningly insignificant for most people's lives. Highlight the cultural and economic elitism that animates the Democratic Party. And GOP members must bring this message home to their constituents through tangible action items. And so some of the things that he says the GOP needs to focus on is holding roundtables and listening to working class people, which is a great idea if you do something with that information. Creating a working families task force, again, no real deliverable there. Focusing on anti-wokeness as a way of courting the working class, emphasizing the Main Street, Wall Street divide, and going after big tech. These things are so toothless, actually, and they really are just, cultural gestures. If you're focusing on anti-wokeness rather than providing free childcare or stable, affordable housing or, long-term healthcare for the elderly, so on and so forth, dignity for working people, you are never going to deliver that. But it seems like both parties, and sometimes the left, fall into a trap of caricaturing working people, believing that the only things that are tangible to them or important are interpersonal problems they might have with another person on Facebook or in their hometown. And I think this, this presents a real issue for the left. The GOP is really good at demobilizing people. They're attacking people's voting rights across the country. They are really good at, having a national flame war rhetorically, with anti-trans bathroom bills and so on and so forth. But within this, the left needs to fight for these bread and butter programs that actually would help the working class. So where do we go in this kind of fractured, bizarre political landscape? We know where they're going, which is doubling down on the culture war stuff. I'm sure increasing the importance of funding in political campaigns and then, attacking every shred of stability and safety that working people have. But, how do we take that information and turn it into a left strategy?
Yeah, I was talking to Vivek, the editor of Catalyst, about this, and he was like, actually the Nazis had offered more to working people than the Republican Party is. I mean, the Nazis are obviously a pro-capitalist enterprise, but he's like, the Nazis actually offered something to some material shreds to working people in their attempt to build a working class base. The Republicans are offering, like you said, just literally nothing, like just the weakest kind of culture war stuff that that they project, and that all too often liberals and the left help them project as the real concerns of working class people. But I do think that's an opportunity for the left. I would be much more worried if I thought there was actually a sector of the Republican Party that wanted to offer some real amelioration to working people alongside all of this culture war stuff, right? Like that would worry me, but that doesn't exist, right? No one in the Republican Party actually wants to offer. There's no elite constituency in the Republican Party for that whatsoever, right? And that's an opportunity for the left, that they are offering just literally nothing, right? So I think that means that creates space for the left to offer its own programs of material improvement of people's lives, you know? And I think, you know, what we've been doing over the, you know, since Sanders in 2016 is right? Like this, we propose the policies that are going to improve people's lives, and we tell people about how they'll improve their lives. And it's been very difficult to win those policies. The deck is stacked against us in any number of ways, but that's the name of the game, right? That's the way working class parties all over the world were built. You know, you're a worker. This is what's making your life bad. Here's what'll make your life better, right? Has to be the basic pitch of the left, again and again and again. And it's going to be slow progress to rebuild that and to build a party that is capable of doing that. But there's just no alternative, you know. And I do think that. I think that the current state, the forces that I've outlined that are deranging the Republican Party are, on the one hand, tremendously dangerous to the left. Like, the Republican Party is now more open than it has really ever been in just complete contempt for basic bourgeois democracy, you know, for the rules of basic bourgeois democracy. And that's really dangerous for the left, because we certainly can't enact policy if it's impossible for us to win elections, right? Like the danger, I think, of, you know, Republican state houses refusing to certify electoral votes or whatever in 2024 is a real one. So on the one hand, that's very dangerous for the left. On the other hand, the incoherence of American society, the weakness of American parties has created an opportunity, right? Like the left has grown massively in the last 5 years through running primary campaigns. And we wouldn't have that opportunity if there weren't this ridiculous primary system in the United States. Now, of course, if we had a proportional representation system and you could just start your own party and run, that would obviously be even way better for us. But the primary system has, such as it is, created an opportunity for us to be able to project our ideas on a much bigger level than we had been than we had been able to project them when we weren't using that system. So I do think there's opportunities for the left right now that are created both by these kind of large-scale kind of structural facts about American society and the Republicans' incoherence and just complete inability to offer anything meaningful whatsoever to workers, even as they talk about workers more and more and more.
I want to follow up on this point that, you know, the Republicans aren't offering anything to workers. I think that is absolutely true. You know, we need only look at their policies, as you've pointed out, to see that that's true. And I think, again, it's also true that the sort of gestures that certain Republicans are making toward populism or toward like a working class agenda, like Josh Hawley and Marco Rubio, who we talked about earlier, they're not really going to I think Marco Rubio, you know, wrote an op-ed about how he doesn't like the PRO Act. They're not actually going to do anything to help workers. But I'm wondering if you think that the kind of incoherence or the structural tensions within the Republican Party that you were just talking about may open up a space for some entrepreneurial or insurgent Republicans to offer some kind of like blood and soil or, you know, pro-populist kind of platform. I mean, you know, Donald Trump obviously is one example. Now, he didn't deliver on the sort of populist end of his platform, but do you think that there is some risk that a figure like that could make inroads with the Republicans? I mean, I just ask because, you know, we are hearing now more politicians, again, like Hawley and Rubio, trying to lean in that direction. There's that think tank American Compass, which styles themselves as, you know, a pro-working class conservative think tank. I don't think that they're serious, but like that raises the question. There does seem to be more interest in projecting that kind of image. So I'm wondering if you think a candidate who espouses kind of right-wing working class politics, if such a thing exists, could come to power.
Yeah, I'm skeptical because there's just no elite support for that within the Republican Party. So there's more interest in that rhetoric than ever before, certainly. And people like Hawley are just so unserious, you know, like Hawley, when the Democrats are trying to raise the minimum wage and Hawley's like, oh, I would support it, but there's no exception for small business. You know, it's like, okay, these are such lame excuses. So, and the fact, so Donald Trump is, I think, a good test case for this. Because like you said, he ran as like the blood and soil, kick the immigrants out, I'll protect Social Security guy. But look at who he staffs his administration with. Like Steve Bannon and what's his name? Miller are...
Tillerson? Miller.
Yeah, Miller. They're the exception. Tillerson is the rule. Like Rex Tillerson, Steve Mnuchin, Mike Pence, right? Like these are establishment figures completely, you know? And so there's no... It would take a lot more development of the policy cadres of the blood and soil team for them to actually be a political alternative in the Republican Party, rather than just a rhetorical strategy that then immediately collapses into old school gut the welfare state, cut all the taxes republicanism once the person actually comes to power. So in that sense, I think there's a market for that kind of rhetoric, absolutely, and we're going to continue to see that kind of rhetoric from the GOP. I'm skeptical that institutionally they have any capacity to actually deliver on that, because there's just no appetite for it among either of the elite factions that dominate the Republican Party at this point.
Yeah, I think you could really see that play out with the tariffs under Trump, because business was panicking. I think they were like, we didn't really think you were going to do this. And it was popular with a lot of the Republican base. I think they felt like it was protecting American workers, and big business was not on the same side. We are about to wrap up, but I wanted to ask one last question, which is a big one that might get us we might have some scandalized commenters after this. But, there are debates raging on the left about left electoralism. And I think that a lot of those take for granted assumptions about political power and money in the United States. And you have laid those bare in a lot of detail and present a much more complex story than the left should take over the Democratic Party, right? So what prospects does that leave the left with for a kind of viable electoral strategy? Is there any kind of coherent political power that we can take over, or is it just a matter of kind of building from scratch while the waves batter us back over and over and making that slow climb to progress?
Yeah, I think the strategy of using Democratic primaries has just inarguably been a massive success for the left. That just seems very, very hard for me for anyone to argue with that. Whether the left can take over the Democratic Party, once upon a time I had a more strident position on this than I do now. I would say I genuinely don't know whether the left can take over the Democratic Party or not. The thing that I think that the leftists often fail to realize is that the two-party system in the United States is extremely strong. The system itself is very strong as it's ever been. The parties themselves are weaker than they've ever been. And that's kind of a paradox, but that's the situation we're in. And that situation is one that presents opportunities for the left. The two-party system constrains us, and the weakness of the Democratic elite presents us with opportunities. So, I kind of think we should keep on doing what we've been doing for the last 5 years until it really stops working, and that point hasn't happened yet. Probably, if I was forced to bet, probably there will come a point when we have to split from the Democratic Party completely, like that. I think that'll probably happen. I don't think the Democratic Party officialdom is going to just let us take over inch by inch, You can't skin a tiger paw by paw, as the English socialist R.H. Tawney once said. So I think I do think that things are going to come to a head, but I think it's a mistake to say like things are going to come to a head. There's going to be a break. Therefore, our job right now is preparing for that break. Like our job right now is to tell people break from the Democratic Party. I don't think that's where things are at, and I don't think anyone has a good enough theory to be so sure about where things are going to go. I think we all need a little bit of humility, and we need to look at what's been working for us and what, given where we think American society is and its political institutions look like, what we think is going to work for the foreseeable future, and be aware that things could change fast. I mean, that's probably as unsatisfying of an answer as it's possible to give to that question, but I think it's just the truth. Fundamentally, my most deeply held belief on this is just really be distrustful of anyone who thinks they have all the answers on this sort of question right now, because it really is up in the air.
Maybe in the meantime, just primary anyone and everyone.
Yes. I think electoralism has been an unalloyed good for the left over the last 5 years, and has forced leftists to go out and talk to people and figure out how to present their ideas to people who aren't kind of naturally primed by their social situation to agree with them. And that can only be a good thing for the left to have to do that.
If you like this video from The Jacobin Show, please hit like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks.